Hi, friends. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Spiritual Sisters podcast. Welcome, welcome. This is Gabrielle Celeste, and I cannot believe that we have not done an episode on basically spiritual bypassing. And I had this conversation with one of the spiritual besties who we're having back on today, and I was like, "Wait, no, we gotta like get on a podcast about this." So, welcome back, our friend Amara Sena. How are you, my friend? Thank you for doing this, and also being so flexible and with the reschedules during this wild Mercury retrograde.
100%. Thank you for having me back. I'm very honored to be here again.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love your podcast. I love you.
I love you too. I was like, oh my gosh, look at you. You're tan. She's in her power color. She's one of my favorite people / Scorpios. Like, I know this is going to be a good time. But yeah, can you believe we haven't done an episode on spiritual bypassing? Like, what?
We were having this conversation a couple weeks ago where we were talking about integration. And I'm like, it's such a skipped over, snoozed over thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why haven't we talked about it? Why isn't it talked about more in general?
Yeah. And I think that conversation was kind of born out of like where we're both at in our process. Because if you think about it, and I think it's super timely because at time of recording, so this is actually going to drop. Are you ready for this? I chose this date specifically for you on August 18th. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
I love August 18th. I have no actual reason to love August 18th, but I think it's such a date. Like,
Man.
I've already.
So I saw the schedule and I was like, oh, I'm going to tell her on recordings. But okay, so the timing of this, right? At time of recording, we are recording during Mercury retrograde, which has been wild, but we're also recording at the end of basically the nodal shift of having been in Virgo and Pisces, which has been wild for you and me from a healing perspective. And we're going into Aquarius and Leo. And I do think it's going to get better for you specifically as an Aquarius rising because you've done so much work.
Yeah.
But we were just kind of like, you said something profound. I was like, whoa, wait. And I knew you could expand on it. And I'll just bring it up and I would love to hear what it brings up for you. But you were like, yeah, people get into the spiritual work because of what they think they can get as a result. Materialistically, especially. And I was like, whoa, profound, So I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh man. It's so crazy because when you do start the journey of healing, there's no like ending. People don't think about the actual journey of it. They just think about the arrival, right? They think about when I'm healed, I can do this. When I'm at this weight, I mean, that's a specific one as a photographer. Yeah. I'll get these photos when I'm at this weight. But the journey is part of it. Like specifically for me as a professional storyteller, because I don't like to be in a square box. I always think about what it is that it, like when it comes to motherhood, like you're along for the journey. It's not, your kids don't care about your weight, all of those kinds of things. Yeah, but I think when it comes to spiritual bypassing, back in the day, I used to just I think most people will think of toxic positivity, right? And it's such a yuck. It's so yuck now, but it's also like overriding people's grief, your big feelings that you have. Like, I think a lot of people, in perspective, when somebody tells you something that is like they're either walking over you or I don't even know how to put it into words, but walking over you, people pleasers will totally understand this. When you respond, no worries. That is, to me, one of the biggest forms of spiritual bypassing because you're totally ignoring your voice. In fact, you do have worries. In fact, thank you for skipping over me. When people say no worries in response, and I've done it before, you're really skipping over some of the bigger parts of your voice. And that to me is a lot of spiritual bypassing as well.
Yeah. Okay. So actually that was going to be like one of my first questions. And I feel like as I was thinking about this in prep, it's like, wait, Gab, like what's your definition of it? So how would you like blatantly describe your definition of spiritual bypassing? And how do you think that maybe your definition has changed, if it has, throughout your process?
I think one of my things is that, well, again, like I had said, people who say no worries.
Yeah.
I think for me now is like totally understanding bits and pieces of my childhood and being kind of like in an awareness, but not really embodying it. You
Yeah.
know, I think that a lot of it is now for me just thinking of my childhood and kind of still bypassing those emotions or fully knowing my attachment style and then still avoiding intimacy, those kinds of things. Knowing what's in my birth chart or my human design and still not even putting it in action because we're so focused on healing. We're so focused on like the action of healing versus integration.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. I feel like bypassing is avoidance, if you're aware of it, or lack of accountability of like your own shadow work.
Your own
And
patterns is a huge thing.
yeah, and then like painting a rainbow over it and being like, everything's okay. Or I just think of like some people I really looked up to that I no longer look up to, where I'm just like, "Oh, like, this is why you're so off-putting to me now. It's because you haven't done your shadow work." And it's kinda hard to seek advice or take advice from people who haven't if you're in this space particularly, that's the place that I'm looking at it from. I think it's different for people depending on where they're at in terms of, like, their consciousness levels and just their awareness in general.
Yeah,
But I think if you're doing this work and you're holding space for others, you have a responsibility to continue to heal.
right. Yeah, and I think there's something to be said versus for what I think a lot of people hope for is the breakthrough. And
Yeah.
the breakthrough people, I think, confuse for healing when it's really the invitation,
Mhm.
you know? So,
Totally. Do you think so besides the like the commentary, like, "Oh, no worries," like, what are some other common examples of spiritual bypassing?
but skipping over the shadow work. I mean, I have never known myself more in my life, and there's still always like, there's always going to be that room for growth, but I know myself way more because of my shadow, because of the I've sat and dug in the trenches of all of the things that were so uncomfortable for me, especially as a child, um, and becoming an adult and becoming a very aware person and wanting to push myself to be comfortable in the parts that make me so uncomfortable.
I didn't ask you this, I don't think we've actually talked about this or even prepped for it, but do you feel like your parents have noticed a shift in you since doing all of this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm not going to cry, but um, my dad's a veteran. He was
Mhm.
adopted. I mean, I know that he's had a lot of life experience, of course, man in his 70s. um I think that because I talk so freely about my shadow work, because I don't want to just call it healing. I think healing itself is um just, it's kind of implying that the work is never done, right? That you never arrive.
Mhm.
But for myself, talking to my dad about it, he openly talks about going to the VA now and having mental health appointments. And I know that without a doubt, when it comes to my relationship with my dad, that I am a leader and I'm his daughter,
Mhm.
both
Mhm.
very beautiful aspects to be proud of.
Mhm.
Um, I had a conversation with my mother a while ago, and then my mom is such a good gift giver. That's like her thing. She loves gifts. She
Yeah.
sent me this beach bag, and inside of it, I didn't even notice it for like 2 weeks before I went to go use it, that she had left me a note in it, and she said that you're my inspiration. You're
Hmm.
what I want to be when I grow up or become in this next life. Yeah.
That's our little water sign hearts.
I, and my mom she's a tough cookie.
Mhm.
I think I've said this before on the last podcast because she's just like bad bitch energy, but she
Mhm.
lives very much in the masculine. And I kind of like lived in the last couple of years wanting to like bridge that gap between both feminine and masculine. But for my mom to say something like that to me was so impactful, and it's like being noticed for small incremental work.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So now noticing that from like your parental figures and having that be reflected back to you, which is such a gift because you're on the other side of it. And the hardest part truly is behind you, at least as like, a third party observer. and from what I've seen, do you feel like happy that you went through this and you didn't bypass it? Like you went deep and into the trenches. You did EMDR, you did emergence, you did your own shadow work and your own process.
Somatic therapy program. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I could never be more grateful for the work. I
Yeah.
honestly, I would not be here in this format or on this podcast if I had
Hmm.
not done the shadow work. And I mean, you got a front row seat to me. I mean, you gave me your head reading, and I was like, no, no, that's a no from me, dog. Like, from January to June or July. Now that we're in, because I got a 6 month reading with you. You already know I'm a fan of like quarterly readings.
Hmm.
Um, I mentioned, I think I've jumped timelines. I
Totally.
don't feel the same. This year has been a big support year, me supporting other people, and really like when I like envision it in my head, it's just that like my roots got deeper, and it was nobody else watering it but me.
Hmm.
You know?
And everyone, not that you mind, but like everyone around you really did a benefit and appreciates it and sees the shift. So, yeah, you totally jumped timelines. And where you were at the beginning of the year is not where you're at now. So, I'm actually really excited for the second half of your year,
Yeah,
personally speaking. Have you noticed people approaching healing with the belief of like, if I heal this wound, then I'll finally get the relationship, money, or success that I
yeah,
want? Yeah. I think that was like the part of our conversation where I was like, "Oh my god, yes!" Like ding, 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 light bulb just went off. Because honestly, same. That's part of the reason that I got into this work. I
yeah,
mean, I felt like I was kind of pushed into it, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't looking for like the shiny, you know, metal or carrot being dangled in front of me as a result of everything I'm doing. And expectations and control have definitely been part of my own shadow.
yeah. I definitely have noticed that, and I think that people are so in tune with an outcome, you know.
Mm.
But the outcome usually, I feel like the main outcome, the goal, is to really like change that perspective in relationship with yourself. It's not when you arrive; it's when you start to feel and integrate it. I mean, I I think that this could be like a 3-day series podcast talking about integration, because it's how, right? Nobody has been taught how. When I did my somatic therapy program, I really had a realization that my parents did absolutely the best they could with the tools they had. And I think I kind of came in thinking I had a lot more trauma. And I think, well, I know as well that things happen in your lifetime that you're going to have to get over. You're going to have to work through. And for me, I kind of placed it higher on a pedestal of like my traumatic experience, but it really wasn't that, right? It was the fact that when I went through that somatic therapy program, I never was taught how to process my emotions, how to process my own healing, those kinds of things. And so it really puts into perspective like how personally we have to live our lives just for us too, you
Mm.
know. Like I've had multiple conversations with all like my two sons and my husband before, and I feel like maybe this is like my elevator slogan or my elevator pitch at this point, but you are your own source of happiness. You're your own source of grounding. And if you're in a relationship, they should only be really adding or building you up. If they take away, then you really have something to sit back and look on. But really, your source of happiness is yourself. How you fill
Mhm.
your time with your boredom, how you lean into creativity, how you treat your body. It's all you. Nobody else is doing it. So when
Yeah.
we learn to do it ourselves, that's really what I think changes the world.
Yeah. Ooh. So how would you what is your definition of integration and how does it work for you? Like how does it part of your process? And then I'll share mine.
I think, and I think it's, you go from healing, which is an action of it's more like you're waiting for it to come to you, right? The healing feels like an arrival. When you start to integrate, you just have to start doing. You have to have confidence. It's like, I think I even said to you via text, it's like lacing your shoes up for a workout. That's
Mhm.
integration.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
getting outside. It's all of those kinds of things. Um, so I really think that integration is about action instead of like when you're healing, it's almost a receiving type of thing.
Mm.
And,
Okay.
and, um, I think that there are certain things, especially in the knowledge that we have out here, there is a lot of glorification in receiving and
Mm.
arriving, but it's never talked about the middle parts of it. I think I said on the last podcast that I really do love living in the messy middle. When I stop
Yeah.
myself and I'm like, damn, bitch, you. That's crazy. Now keep going.
Yeah, right. I love that you mentioned like yours is action. It's so interesting because mine feels like it's the opposite, and I almost wonder if it's like a fight or flight response. Is it fight or
Mm-hmm.
flight? Yeah, because like I have more of like I think mine's more like action oriented, but
Mm-hmm.
like integration for me is actually because I'm so top heavy, not literally, but yes, literally. I meant more living in my mental, and I'm like so in my head that I'm like, oh wait, integration's like not me doing anything for some time. So that's really cool to hear
Oh
someone
yeah.
else's perspective.
Well, I think it is just about your own perception on what
Mhm.
it is, because I think that healing for me was receiving, and now oh my god, I'm drawing a blank on the word. Sorry, Bree, take it out. Um, integration. Integration is more about action, right?
Yeah.
Nobody else can do it for you.
Yeah, totally. So at what point do you think healing becomes transactional instead of becoming transformational?
Um, Hold on, I'm going to pause on that. I repeat the question really quick.
Sure. At what point does healing become transactional instead of transformational?
I think healing becomes transactional. I think we've already kind of covered this in a certain perspective. It's when I get here, when I have more money, when I'm skinny. I think it becomes more transactional in that
Mhm.
right. It's all about the arrival. When it becomes more transformational, it's truly grounding your own energy. I think it's pushing forward in something that's very uncomfortable, something that
Mhm.
you don't want to deal with. Um, I've heard on another podcast before where they call it friction lists, and so
Hmm.
I feel like having a list and talking about just kind of the things that make you so uncomfortable. For me,
Mhm.
having hard conversations used to be really uncomfortable. Saying the thing or speaking what I needed from a situation was really uncomfortable, and then all of a sudden I started doing it, and it's so much easier now. And it's not a
Yeah.
transaction. It became something part of now of what I think of who I am versus like, oh, I don't really want to say that because that's uncomfortable. Now it's like, no, that was the transformation. So I
Mhm.
think that there's, just a very blurred line between transactional and transformational.
Do you think that healing can become addictive?
100%. And I think that healing is a transaction for so many
Mm.
people.
Mhm.
And I think we
Y
get into a really murky territory when you look at it in that way. And I think, it's like our human experience to believe in those kinds of things. And,
Mhm.
you know, it is, you have to like withdraw a little bit and kind of check in and see, where am I at in this?
Mhm. Can you say more about the addiction portion to the healing? Because you kind of do get on like this, at least for me, this is how I found myself to be in the earlier stages where it's almost like a high.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, more, more, more. Like you can feel like the shockwave of your consciousness expanding. So like I remember when I was like, I can't get enough, and then you kind of come out of it, and some people don't. Some people get lost in the sauce. So for me,
Yeah.
that's kind of
And
where I was at.
I honestly think that at one point I was going to be one of those people who was lost
Really.
in the sauce. Yeah. I mean, I was in therapy for years, talk therapy. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm so grateful for all therapists, but that what at some point you kind of recognize that, you're meant to be here for a long time. You're meant to be with your therapist for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, a lifetime, years. And that becomes addictive because then something happens and your mental brain goes, I can't wait to talk to my therapist about this because they are going to solve my problems. And at some point, you have to get, and this is why I think I loved EMDR so much and that somatic therapy program, because they're designed for you to graduate.
Yeah.
So you get to the point where you start trusting yourself. But I think, from like 2023 until probably the deepest part of my shadow work, which, has been this year, I became addicted to just being hyper focused on learning more about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Love all the birth chart stuff. But then you can get into human design, you can get into all these other things. And I think that if you just trust your gut and go with one, you can get a lot of answers from it. But it's not like, okay, I learned that, mastered that, now next, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like being a student forever, which I love. You gain so much knowledge, but at some point you become a teacher. And then one day you're like, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
You started trusting yourself,
Yeah. Okay. So do you think that, and I feel like it's so common to go through that phase for sure. And you
I
definitely
think
can get lost in the sauce.
100%. Yeah.
Do you think that that whole like idea, and I'm almost like, I have this like memory in my third eye right now of when I was in mediumship, like a mediumship program for like a year with our teacher. Her name's Cheryl. She was on, go back to like the earlier episodes, like 3 years ago or so. And I remember we would break off into like these practice cohorts. And there was this like, I guess, well-trained medium. Like he had been in the game for some time, but he was so ego ridden the way that he presented himself. And I almost wonder if like the addiction to healing kind of like creates the spiritual superiority in this space. What do you think that looks like if you've yourself experienced it? And if you haven't, I got stories I can share.
Well, I think spiritual superiority is when an ego puts on spiritual clothing.
Ooh.
Okay. Back in the day, I used to love. I was a Beachbody coach. I loved Beachbody. I loved the program. It was probably the fittest I've ever been. But I remember having a memory in my head because, it's an MLM. So you've got uplines, you got these people who are inspirational, and then there was this product from this beautiful woman called, it was Mama Mala, so it was Mala beads, and everybody kind of got one when they reached a certain goal. And for me, that was like, I just wanted it so bad. I have 2. I only wear them on special days now because I think that I put so much thought into the arrival of the product, the ego, and so I think that that was kind of one of them for me, if that helps.
Yeah, for sure.
I would love to hear
Um,
what you have as far as a definition.
it's interesting because I see it's, oh, maybe this is reflecting back to me in my own. This just kind of came to me in real time as you asked that question. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of it, and maybe because I'm interested in breaking into this next level, but I'm having this kind of like dance with myself. It's like an inner turmoil of like, I don't want to sacrifice or, jeopardize or go against my integrity for the sake of a dollar and making more. And it's interesting because the people that I'm seeing right now, where I'm like, oh, wait, that came from a place of ego.
Mm-hmm.
They only have arrived at that place because they're in the like higher 5 figures, 6 figures within their business, right?
Yeah.
But it's the delivery of how they're coming off. And I was like, you think that that's confidence and it's humility and it's coming from a healed version of self, but I can tell in the way that they delivered it and how they said it, it's very subtle cues because I'm picking up on that on a psychic and very Piscean way that of doing so level, that it's coming from a place of ego and it's part of their marketing.
Right.
And in the way that it's framed and the picture is painted, it is, and this is my discernment coming in. I'm like, oh wait, like this is like you coming off as you being better. Because then later on they'll cut someone off at the knees, so to speak, if they see the success, like them surpassing the success because it happened to me. So yeah.
It's interesting because I think that in that perspective, it's just assuming that they're assuming that their healing journey was the right way. So it's
Mm.
the only way to go. And so they're
Mhm.
coming from that place of ego, which I think if you approached it with more curiosity, I think that people would get a lot more insight on that, you know.
Yeah, totally. And then speaking of like maybe how like the marketing, and I know that social media is a big thing. How do you feel like social media has influenced the way that spirituality is marketed?
Let's see. I think that the algorithm is it fully pushes people who know the way, who think they know the way, right? They've got all of these um, great marketing plans. They've hired all of these people to do the work for them. So people are so compelled to clickbait on the person who they think has all of the answers, assuming they've done all of their shadow work and all of their integration. So I think social media really glorifies, the way, the carved way, when
Mhm.
people, to me, what I find the most authentic or the most human is when they're like, I don't know. This is messy. Healing is messy. It's not pretty. It's not, and I've always kind of wondered too with people who film themselves crying on social media, what, what the real message is, because I know that it's like, it's one of those things that your people are called to help when you're seeing somebody crying on social media, and it's always made me really wonder people's motives behind it. Like,
Mhm.
are you gaining the people who are going to give you the attention,
Mhm.
or are you trying to be really transparent or authentic? And I've definitely gone on stories on social media before and talked about a subject that was really like heavy and close to me. And I have like not bawled, but I'm not filming myself bawling and then making a reel out of it and having like a whole marketing plan behind it. I have a harder time with that one.
Yeah, because it's not really it's well, I know this is like a buzzword, it's so overused, but it's not authentic because there's like the transactional, like what am I gonna get as a result energy behind it.
Right. I I think I'm always going to kind of pull back and question it, even when I know I've gone through some hardships, but to me to me the crying is private. It's a very private matter that you can use that format of what your message really is in a totally different way without it.
Do you think that's like the Scorpio in you in some way?
Probably
Yeah.
because I there's a lot of times where I'm like, man, I think I'm gonna cry and I don't even know. I've cried
Yeah.
in an ESPN documentary, and my brother was like, "Get out of here! No, no, you're gonna watch me cry because this is a
Yeah.
personal." But then
Yeah.
another time, I'm not. Yeah. I just think that there's certain things that crying is so private.
Yeah, and also what nice how nice it is and what nice of a feeling it is to be able to, like, release your emotions too,
Oh yeah,
and, like, even if someone else is gonna be uncomfortable, well, that's them not feeling comfortable, like, feel like, observing it and then, like, obviously the emotions they're feeling within themselves as well. So, yeah, expressing such a thing. I have noticed myself within myself, I'm, like, glitching because, like, so much information is coming through, if you can't tell, listeners. Um is I feel more, comfortable expressing my own emotions, like, if I wanna cry, like, it's gonna come out, like, I don't really hold myself back as much. Not that I'm getting online and crying because that's just not my style
you
either.
don't
Maybe that's just, like, a
cry.
Cancer water sign thing, I don't know. But, yeah, I definitely think there's something to it because it's an easier release, so to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I have a couple more questions.
Okay.
What responsibility do spiritual practitioners, have when discussing manifestation, abundance, or trauma?
I'm not a spiritual practitioner, so I don't like, I know what I'm drawn to and I know what I'm not drawn to. But I think that they have a responsibility to be honest about the complexity of being human, right? Because they're always talking in a format that is the pyramid. When you get here, then you got to do next. And when you get there, you got to go next. When healing within itself is not linear.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, I feel like as far as people who I look to is I want to hear how they've healed in certain ways without it being too complex. We might have to stew on that question a little bit more.
So maybe tell me what you're interested in terms of like a practitioner. Like, where are you going to be like, yes, take all my money versus not?
I am really drawn to people's stories. You know
Mm-hmm.
that about me.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's somebody that I have to feel connected to within their story, but at the same time that they're offering hope, right? Because life is not a math equation. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like any of those kinds of things. So I think for me, I know for me, it's somebody offering hope and saying, you're going to be seen, you're going to be safe, and you're going to be heard and held. And it's not just like, oh, well, if you don't do it this way, then sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about that before, but it's saying their way is the only way.
Your Mercury is in Sag, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you know what? I've noticed that Mercury and Sag storytelling is a big thing for them. Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. I
I
love that.
I love people's stories, so I think that is probably one of the greatest ways to build any kind of audience is building a connection, right?
Totally.
And I'm kind of in the phase of my life where I've done all of that. I've shared so much about my life, and as I've grown through things,
So if you think that, well, I guess what is healing all about at the end of the day? Final question.
healing is about being okay with being within yourself, and honestly, probably being left alone, like to a certain extent, like being okay with being alone, because we fill our time with so much, especially in this day and age where there is no downtime. We have our phone in our hand constantly. So I think healing is saying, wow, I have all of this free time, and the answer not being what am I going to do to fill it, because that alone time is so uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. I think being with yourself, that's when I had like literally when I was like in my isolation in my little couch, like in on an island in Coronado, literally in my shit. I was quite like I was literally to myself. And that's when everything came in. I just like had to feel it and like move through it. And I think it's almost as simple as like feeling those uncomfortable emotions, letting yourself do that and pushing through them. Because there is another side, but it's really getting through that and pulling yourself out of it because no one's coming to save you, if I'm being honest.
yeah, and I think that it's like peeling back the layers of all of the things that we've learned over the years on how to protect, and most things out of fear. So it's like trusting how to have how to live with joy while also not waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever had that moment, but I've definitely had that moment where I'm like, everything is so good right now. I'm waiting for the roof to fall in. So healing is trusting,
Mm-hmm.
trusting yourself and how you respond to things, to adversity, you know.
Trust and surrender is definitely the name of the game. To answer your question, I don't think I have recently, but I definitely know that's part of the process where it's like, okay, like you've reached this high in terms of like the capacity of the person that you are at this present moment, but like you're meant to evolve and continue to evolve. So like it's not forever. So, but the trade off with that is that everything that I've had taken away from me, like me having to move away from my family, do my healing, I came back and my setup now is better than it was before. And it wouldn't have happened that way had I not taken that risk and trusted and surrendered and felt like shit for a whole 2 years, but it's okay.
Well, I think too that the goal isn't to become a healer for a lifetime, right? You're going
No.
to have to learn how to just become more fully alive, and that
Mhm.
is the goal.
Mhm.
Not to heal.
Mhm.
I think about it this way. When I'm in my 90s and I'm on my deathbed, and if all the things kind of work out in the way that I hope that they do for my lifetime,
Mhm.
and I'm surrounded by my kids, hopefully grandchildren, and they ask me, what do you have left? What else, I hope that
Mhm.
I can say I've done everything.
Mhm.
I didn't have to spend a lifetime where I'm going to have to ask God or spirit, please let me have a little bit more time to do the things that I wanted, because I've spent 30 years with my face down trying to heal and not live.
Mhm.
I don't want that when it comes to that point,
Yeah.
you know?
I feel like yeah, totally. Totally. My girlfriend, I was complaining to her the other day, and she was like, our 40s are just going to be it, right? Because I was a little bit frustrated about where I was at in my process and just like, some of the sacrifices I've had to make, if I'm being very honest. And my shaman would say, that's righteous indignation. I don't care if it's righteous indignation. It's part of my process.
Right.
That's where that's what I feel. But, she's like, our 40s are going to be great. And I was like, I don't want to be living in the future. Like, I want to enjoy the present now moment. And I think also healing in a lot of ways brings you back to that. And even though it is uncomfortable in terms of like feeling that, being with it is quite literally how you are not spiritually bypassing and can
Yeah.
get to that place of fulfillment.
Well, and look at it this way too. Like, I am somebody who's in my 40s. I'm in my early 40s, and I've started all the signs of like perimenopause, which is a whole different clusterfuck of living.
Mhm.
And I would not feel as good as I do now, given all of that information that I just gave you, if I had not done my shadow work. So
Wow.
your 40s are, yes, it's another thing to live through. You know what I mean? Because then when you have your 40s, you're like, maybe it's my 50s. When you get your 50s, maybe it's my 60s.
Mhm.
And so where it's at is what age you're at.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's all you need to know, you know?
Oof, that definitely takes you out of future tripping for sure, and I know you and I have been working on that quite a bit. I love that.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like I listened to this podcast the other day, the Good Life Project, and they had
Mm.
a topic on rumination and how as we get older, the numbers of all the brain research that they've done are even higher because we ruminate so much more on things, which is, you're my texting homie where I'm like, I cannot get over this. So we
Mhm.
ruminate a lot more than we used to. We obsess
Mhm.
with it. And that is like, trying to come with an outcome. And it's the same thing as, for people who get addicted to healing, they're addicted to trying to control the outcome.
Mhm.
And that's what, just to like round it back out to how social media has like done its like warpath is it's always trying to dig us out. It's always trying to give us the answer, right? And healing, when you're stuck in that like cycle of healing, it's trying to control the outcome.
Yeah.
So again, surrender. I can't control this. But what
Yeah.
I can control is how I respond to it. And that's when when you are responding to something that the 5 year, the version of me 5 years ago would have not responded on the same level. I am like, that's
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah. That's right. That's a good indication right there.
Yeah.
Maybe I could do an episode on like indications or indicators that you've done some serious healing work.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. Maybe that's the
So
next one.
it's when you stop giving a shit.
Yeah.
I asked this like 80. I used to run a restaurant, and we had this gentleman. He was like our Italian staple. He came in, he called it running his errands when he'd come visit all the girls at the restaurant. That's how he got out of the house. That was his community. It was his birthday. It was like his 84th birthday. And I asked him, I said, Giuseppe,
Oh.
I know, Giuseppe, what's your advice on being 84, if that was his age? And he said, when you get to my age, you just stop giving a fuck about what other people think.
Yeah.
And I was like, mic down. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your wine. Calamari. Yeah.
Enjoy.
And
Oh
it's
my
true.
gosh.
So
Yeah, dang. Well, let us know, what do you have going on? What are you working on? I'm sure your business has shifted as a result of your internal work.
it's
And
as as my internal work has gone on, I have become just a little bit more private and more guarded with my time. I am in the busiest part of my life. So any kind of project or thing that I was working on, I've decided to kind of put a little bit to a halt so I can just, I don't know, enjoy my summer.
mhm.
So, Yes, but
Where's your Instagram handle so people can find you and your creative projects for when that does
my
blossom even
my
more?
Instagram handle is at Labella Vita Creative.
Mhm. And can we count on some creative writing projects for you in the future?
100%. Yeah.
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 I'm excited for
I
you.
think it's kind of time to the point where I used to love writing and now I'm a little bit more about maybe I should speak.
Mhm.
So,
With with the storytelling,
yeah.
Mercury. I mean, it goes both ways, writing and literally speaking. So, oh man, friend, thank you for coming on, and you will be back on, I am sure.
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
I love you guys. I always miss Bree when she's not here, but
she'll see
one
this.
of these times.
Yeah, she'll see it. Do you want to say bye
Yeah.
together? Okay. Until next time, guys, you know where to find us. Three, two, one. Bye.
Bye.